As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
One of the worst performances of my career, and they never doubted it for a second.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble.
You just gotta keep living, man. Livin.
Son of a bitch. He stole my life.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Welcome back to the Shot by Shot podcast. Today we are going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite films of the year, and that is Evil Does Not Exist from Ryusuke Hamaguchi, who, if you're not familiar with his work, he started to reach international acclaim back in 2021 when he released his film Drive My Car, which had a very successful theater run for an international film, was one of the most successful Japanese films to come out in recent years, and even earned him both a Best Picture nomination for the film and a Best Director nomination, which is very rare for international directors, which has really put him on the map as one of the most interesting directors working in Japan today. And this was a much anticipated follow-up coming off of the success of Drive My Car. And Drive My Car was a very kind of more emotional film about relationships, like some of his other films, such as Wheel of Fantasy and Fortune and Passion, dealing with, humans having conversations about relationships, which has been a strong element of a lot of his films. But this film is a little different from that. It's much more slow. It's much more meditative with not as much clear dramatic conflicts. We don't really have objectives, obstacles, and deadlines until we get to the third act of this film. Like I said, it's very slow paced and meditative. And instead of human relationships as the focus of the film, he focuses much more on a relationship between human beings and our environment, and the relationship that we have with nature, and kind of the push and pull element of that relationship that us human beings inevitably have with nature, along with things such as, the urban life versus the rural life, and our just dependency as humans mostly on technology. And there's just so much that he's really communicating in this film, all done brilliantly with show don't tell. It's an ultra show don't tell movie where, there's not like these real, it's a movie that will leave, at least for me, every single time I saw this film, I left the theater thinking differently, feeling differently. Just the meditative state that the film puts you in really made me just feel different when I left the theater. It inspires action and makes you want to take action and be a better person yourself. And it doesn't do this through these angry arguments and these preachy dialogue scenes. It really does it with its approach to show don't tell and his incredible filmmaking, which on a first watch I thought was very good. One of the best films I had seen in 2023. But on a second watch, I just realized how much I missed about this film. And it was truly one of the best theater experiences I've had this year, watching it for that second time, which is the first in over 6 months. It's such a deep film, yet such a simple film. And there's just so much to really talk about, because I really believe that Ryusuke Hamaguchi is one of the most interesting directors working today. And when he makes a film, it's going to really be a special piece of cinema. And we just have so much to say about it. Oscar, what are your thoughts on Ryusuke Hamaguchi's new film, Evil Does Not Exist?
Yeah, this is. I saw this film. When did I see it? 3 months ago now. I had been anticipating it for ages. I missed it at London Film Festival. I really wanted to go and see it, but I managed to catch it at its theatrical release over here. Man, this film is. I just remember after it finished, I just sat in my seat, just still. I was like numb. It's so good. It's an incredibly reflective film on kind of the laws of nature and what not to mess with. And I think, like you're saying, Hamaguchi's slow and meditative approach is something that we aren't seeing enough of nowadays, honestly. But it is so effective in this, ridiculously effective. I think it's quite a good comparison. I know Ryan and I saw a horror film the other day called Inner Violent Nature, which is beginning passed around a lot on social media. That film, I think, is a great example of how not to make a slow film. it really butchers its editing and wastes its main images, and it just tries and cuts it down. This is a perfect example of a slow film where he captures the importance of every image and just holds on that rather than cutting away at the wrong moment and shoving loads of edited clips together, and it just ruins the feel of the film. But this Hamaguchi just gets it right. For me, Drive My Car was excellent. This is just a step up for me. It just left me speechless, honestly. But is such a brilliant juxtaposition on kind of and urban environments, like you were mentioning, and kind of these ignorant characters versus these very knowledgeable. And I think the title of the film itself is so reflective on how we just see these kind of people in nature, like evil cannot exist there. Like I think, and is kind of coming from the ignorance of the people living in those urban cities, of just having no idea whatsoever. But yeah, absolutely incredible film, and one of my favorites of the year so far, for sure.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. This is like a really good execution of slow cinema compared to like what you were saying. Yeah, Hamaguchi's just a great director. I think Drive My Car, like Alex was saying, is definitely one of the best from 2021, and was my first experience with it, or him as a director. I love the connection that you kind of feel with the nature and the community in this, particularly probably through the protagonist, Takumi. It takes its time. Scenes are quite drawn out. It's a very meditative like experience, especially at times when you're like in these moments with the nature. Probably probably the first 2/3 of the film are more in that kind of nature setting. It's definitely something. It's a bit different to Drive My Car, where you really do feel that runtime. This is quite a short, like hour 40, hour 45. Did you know this was initially supposed to be a 30-minute short film with no dialogue, and they changed it to a feature during production?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear that.
I did not know that. I'm very happy about that.
I can feel a lot of similarities with Kiyoshi Kurosawa's work, who I discovered was actually one of his mentors, so that actually made sense. Who, funnily enough, made a kind of short film this year, which I wish he also converted that to a more a full feature length film. That was maybe a bit short. But yeah,
it was a feature length, to be fair.
Yeah, 45 minutes. That is, yeah, it's technically feature length, but I would prefer it to be a more length like this was. But yeah, this was really impressive. Thematically interesting. I never felt overly attached to the characters, which was maybe one of the reasons I didn't. The finale didn't fully hit for me. It's a jarring ending. I mean, it does switch up the tone of the film quite drastically. It's very different to the rest of the film, which kind of plays it more realistic in a more realistic setting. So yes, it didn't impact me emotionally like Drive My Car did. That's maybe why I'm not quite as high or not as used to. I don't think it's like the masterpiece. But I did really enjoy it. It's definitely a film that makes you think after watching it. So yeah, really, really impressive stuff from Hamaguchi.
Yeah, I actually took note of this as well. As like Oscar mentioned, that it's a movie that for me, I just had to sit with at the end of the credits. Like as the credits rolled, it wasn't a movie where I was ready to get up and kind of, go worry about, okay, what am I going to eat after or anything like that. Like it's just really, I found it to be such a moving experience of a film. And I really think, as great, Hamaguchi is an incredible director. And I think still, though, the true MVP of this film, I'm just going to say right now, is Eiko Ishibashi, who composed the music.
100%. No.
Sorry, was that?
No, 100%. I agree with you. It's one of the best scores of the year.
It's such an odd score, but it works so perfectly.
Yeah, it's really, like I said, like the film just puts you in like another state of mind, and it's like very meditative. And I think so much of that comes from Ishibashi's music. And I later found out from interviews, she actually was really what inspired the film, is when they worked together on Drive My Car, which is another incredible collaboration musically from the two of them, that Ishibashi wanted to compose music for a film of Hamaguchi's, like where the music was composed first. And so they started working on this project together. And then film and the story and the images all really came from her music. And he was actually, as she was composing the music, he was living nearby with one of her friends and realized that her studio is totally surrounded by nature, and realized how much nature is an influence on her creative process. And he really kind of grew the film from there. And I think that, her music really is the core foundation of this film. And I think just the way Hamaguchi uses music compared to his other films is a huge step forward for him as an artist and crafting a cinematic experience. So I'm a huge fan of his work. I think he's one of the most interesting directors. One thing I just really disagree with him on is his approach to music. His film in 2021, he did Drive My Car, but he also released another film that same year called Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, which is a great, great film. His script and his writing are incredible. His direction of actors is incredible. And it's one of the few films with pretty much no music at all, which is just straight conversational dialogue that, I've given a high rating to, because I'm normally very critical of those films and don't have much interest in that type of filmmaking. And I think he is just that good of a writer, and his conversations really do kind of flow and evolve in a longer format rather than just kind of exposition to serve the plot. And his understanding of character, and dating back to films like Passion, which was one of his projects he made in school, which is kind of similar to Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. And I think that he's one of the few filmmakers who's that talented that he's able to make films without music. But just because you're so good you're able to doesn't mean I think that it's still a positive decision for your film. And I think that in Drive My Car, when he starts to really incorporate music, especially from such a talented composer, it just adds such a deeper emotional layer to it than his other films. And I think he really takes a step forward here with his use of Eiko Ishibashi's music. And I really wish that he would kind of embrace what music can do for a film more. So one thing I'm sure anyone who's watched this film will notice is that it cuts the music very abrupt and jarringly. And my interpretation of this at first was because it's definitely very jarring and unsettling when it's done. And I kind of took it as, because the music, what it does is it's almost always only used when we're in nature, and it has this peaceful kind of harmonious meditative feeling to it. The music cuts very abruptly, and I view that as all of this peace and harmony in nature can end just like that. And we'll see in the ending how all of the kind of peaceful lifestyle to these people can just be gone just like that in a snap second. And I kind of interpreted the music that way. When I saw some interviews with Hamaguchi, I realized that I didn't love his answer on it. His reasoning was more that he feels like music can be very manipulative towards the audience and doesn't like to manipulate them that way. So he made it abrupt to kind of remind the audience of that manipulation of the music. So I think it's the one area of his game as a director he could really develop if he more just embraced music, especially working with literally one of the most talented composers working today, one of the most exciting new composers in the industry. I think would really just make his artistic voice just have that next level emotional layer. And because I think those are like a lot of the best scenes is when we're immersed in that harmony of the music and nature and the sound landscapes of the film and nature, which I found so moving and kind of hypnotic.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying about the harsh cuts in and out of music, and how we just kind of get the harsh cuts with the image as well. The image will just kind of stop, and we'll be in a different place. The music will just absolutely cease, and that's something I absolutely picked up on the first time round. And even my partial rewatch here, which didn't go very well, it's ridiculously impactful to do it like that. And I like what you mentioned about how he says he's kind of reminding us that it's not just all about the music, and how that can like change our perception on it. But I haven't got a lot to say on the music because my rewatch lasted like 18 minutes, just because I can't find anything to watch it on, unfortunately. But yeah, from what I remember, it's just sets the tone perfectly, especially in that kind of opening shot. We kind of get those the long moving shots looking upwards into the woods from the ground, and you get kind of that somber music playing over it. Is so good.
Yeah, the best moment of the music's definitely the start, because there's like no dialogue for 10 minutes. Like the music is really impactful during that starting, as you're seeing those like long. I think they're supposed to be like POV shots. You do kind of see the daughter looking up at the trees at the end. So I think it's her walking through the forest. But yeah, a great intro with the score. Like Alex saying, I loved her score and Drive My Car. That was also one of the best of the years. So yeah, she delivered it once again. 'Cause it's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the score should be in the conversation for the Academy Award. It's really like this is neck and neck for me with Dune 2 with pretty much every award this year. Like if Dune 2 didn't come out, like this would probably be at the top of my list. It's
Challengers.
easily number 2. Yeah, this blows out Challengers. It's like, are you talking score or picture?
Score.
Score and picture.
Yeah.
Both.
That's but anyway, this is far above this beautiful harmonious score is so much better than the techno score of Challengers, which I do like, but this is just next level. But yeah, I think for me it's going to really take something very impressive to take the number 2 spot from this film, because I just connect with so much about it. And I think really I think we should talk about the most major element, which is, of course, the relationship with nature and the relationship with the environment that we inhabit. And just the presence of nature in the frame of his images is so strong, where it's constantly at the top of the frame. You'll see mountains in the background. There's some presence of nature that's just bigger than the characters. We have that opening shot, which is just a long, like worm's eye view tracking shot of trees above looking up. And it goes on for an insanely long time that almost no director would hold that shot for that long, especially to open up your film. And it's just going on forever and ever. And I think it's so important to hold it for that long, because so much of what this film's doing is just showing us the scope of nature and how much bigger it is than us. Nature just occupies such a more space in the frame of most of these shots than the human characters. It's constantly dwarfing the human characters in size. And that opening shot just goes on for so long because that's how much of nature there is on Earth. Like so much of the world is nature. It's not man-made cities or civilization. It's just trees and oceans and, natural settings. And it's just immersing us in the gigantic scope of nature and how much it's almost like a divine presence, how much bigger it is than us. And that long opening shot really does a great job of immersing us into that. There's also that shot, the tracking shot early of Takumi, the lead character, walking with his daughter Hannah, and it's just tracking with them for a long time. And then this big hill comes into the foreground, blocking them. And as soon as it does, it's like a slope up, making us notice how much higher it is than them. And then we go back to tracking with them. And it's just always kind of showing us the scope of how much bigger it is than the characters, with them smaller in the frame, also framing them within the frame of nature, using it in the foreground, and does such a great job of kind of, like I keep saying, letting us know the scope of it. But also, I think it's worth mentioning that I think it's intentionally set in the wintertime, because the plants are all dead in the wintertime. There's even though we're in nature, it's not these vibrant greens. It's mostly dead plants and snow on the ground, which I think is intentional because it's definitely commenting on how we as humans are killing nature. But also even Takumi, who is the lead character, who clearly has a great care for nature and the way he interacts with his environment. But all the first shots we're seeing of him is, him chopping down wood, him with a big stack of firewood. His house is entirely made of wood, both on the inside and the outside. It's all wood. So we're constantly also seeing, all these characters are using nature to some degree. And there is like this kind of push and pull relationship with nature that the characters have, which I find really interesting. And it also just kind of really lets us take in the beauty of nature, especially with the beautiful music that we get to hear, while also really showcasing us that all of these characters, whether it's the extremes of the corporate pollution, or a more small scale character like Takumi, who's just chopping down trees for his home and firewood. They're all using the environment to some degree.
Yeah, I love an appreciation of nature, in this film does it so well. And I like how Hamaguchi uses the daughter Hannah as kind of this figure of appreciation for nature. You know, we see her wandering alone many times in this film, and kind of spoilers, she ends up kind of getting lost in the end of the film. This is kind of juxtaposed with those kind of the careless urban residents that I was mentioning at the beginning. And like you're saying, those tracking shots of her through the woods, and then the blocking of all the trees, is sometimes she'll just be barely visible as she's kind of walking along. We've just kind of got trees in front of us, and these just wide angle takes. It just immerses so well into kind of this area, with kind of human characters in the shot just even being barely visible. The antithesis of kind of the city and woodland areas is highlighted brilliantly. I think we kind of are the reason our urban kind of characters are in this film. They're trying to get this planning thing for glamping, which I think is such an important thing, because obviously, like, camping is kind of a usual country activity, but instead Hamaguchi uses kind of glamping as kind of this modern day variation, kind of urbanized slightly, and just making it a lot fancier. And it kind of just really hits that contrast between the two, the difference of having it just camping, but no, it's this really fancy thing with loads of technicalities to it. And he's kind of calling us out, the audience, throughout the entire film, like, this is what you're doing to the woodland areas, and you're the ones to blame. And with kind of these woodland areas, every now and again we get the distant gunshots in the background of kind of hunting of animals and deers, kind of reminding us of almost our place in the kind of laws of nature and the nature cycle, that kind of dominance that we think we have. Even just the local residents of this thing, the ones hunting them, the kind of reminder that we are kind of meant to be dominant to the kind of livestock and inhabitants of these woods. But as we know, that doesn't really end up well, and I'll kind of touch on it later, but I think I've got an idea about the kind of the ending of the film and the whole use of the deer.
Yeah, the whole like nature versus capitalism company coming in is definitely most interesting, like, kind of elements of the film. Like I said at the start, I feel like we got a good kind of grasp of the connection between the community and nature, the way they kind of live off just kind of the like natural things within the like forests and stuff. Like, we see them collecting water from the stream, and that's all without dialogue at the start. So it just plays so well into that kind of conflict of the incoming company who want to come in and kind of disrupt and basically destroy everything that they've built in their community, like you were saying, and it really disrupts their whole lives. And like Alex was saying, like, how there's a difference with the score outside the nature scenes. I feel like there's a noticeable difference between the cinematography as well, especially when compared to when we're in the nature or the forest at the start, compared to something like the meeting between the company and the community, or the car scenes. You just were saying, like, there's these like perfectly composed shots with the nature around the characters. The camera always feels alive in some way when we're in the kind of nature areas, compared to like a meeting or something like that, where I feel like it's pretty basic static shots of the community or people chatting cars, or there's even some weird like mixes of like handheld shots from outside the cars. There's a lot of intentions here that to kind of feel like a distinct feeling between the two kind of environments, and so he's like visually creating even more divide between the nature and like the invading elements of the city. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff he's doing here with the cinematography, to kind of play into those themes of the movie.
Yeah, you're totally. I totally agree with you on the way he creates just a totally different feeling and aesthetic to the film when we're in nature, for that opening 10 minutes of no dialogue, lots of music, into that kind of town hall meeting seminar type of scene where it's just no elevation, no music, just straight conversations. And on a first watch, I found that scene actually to be really boring at the time. I was like, I guess I just wasn't in the right state of mind for the film or for whatever reason. But so on a second watch, I'm thinking like, okay, like when I got to go to the bathroom, like I'll go during that scene. That scene was pretty boring. And I'm watching on the second watch, and I'm like, holy shit, like this is like the best, one of the most important scenes of the film. Like this is everything that like I've written films that have similar type of conflicts and ideas and themes to what's being discussed in that. Like it's so much of like I like to, I don't like to talk too much on this podcast about like my own views and beliefs. I try to more just break down the film for what it is. But like this is a film that I really do just it covers a lot of things that I do have, I guess, stronger opinions about. And it really is expressed so greatly in that scene where this kind of corporate infection, I'll call it, and I do mean that in the most offensive way possible, of the community, where it's this kind of harmonious piece of the community is broken up by the damage that a corporation can do on a community, and these kind of metro corporations spreading far out into non-urban communities, and just the city bleeding out into the mountain communities. And I know some of this was inspired by Hamaguchi when he was staying at Eiko Ishibashi's friend's house in nature, and he really felt like he was the overly dependent city guy, and he was like he was really the one talent agent character who becomes inspired by Takumi and wants to be like him. That character, I think, is very much a stand-in for how Hamaguchi felt as he was writing this film. And you know, just from the before we even go in, that first shot, we have the mountains above, we have like the nature that's being leveled by humans below, and then the setting, the town hall center in the middle of the frame, just to set that scene. And it's really like, just like Ryan said, the opposite of everything that we've been feeling and experiencing, the opposite emotional feeling that from everything prior. Like this is not a film that's going to always be entertaining you, but I always say, like, if the objective of a film is not always to entertain or to have like this narrative arc or anything, the job, and most importantly, is to create an emotional response. And I think this film does such a great job of that, and it really changes the way it wants you to emotionally respond in this scene. And you know, I'm a city guy. Like I'm not someone who lives in a rural mountain community or probably ever will, but I still kind of understand where I connect with it, even though I live in such a different environment, and to a degree, the environment that's being criticized here, it's this kind of corporate mentality, kind of destroying communities. Because where I live, it's, even though I'm in the city, it's very much like a community oriented environment and neighborhood type of city. And you know, there are a lot of like New York metro corporations who have been really like infecting the city with, you know, chains and these kind of high rises and just all different types of corporate profit investments, I guess you could say, that are doing damage to a lot of communities in, you know, my city and all over. And it's bleeding out, of course, into suburbs and more rural communities as well. So that's where I really relate, because, you know, I don't go to a lot of them myself, but there seems like every other week there's some kind of town hall meeting about some government or corporate decision that's having great effects on the community. So all of this stuff really did hit home. And it's interesting because if this was a Hollywood scene, it would be everyone yelling and this big angry mob of people like coming at these talent agents. But Hamaguchi plays it in such a more realistic way of these people are actually calm. They're definitely getting some anger out, some of the characters, but it's not like this just angry mob to heighten the dramatic conflict for the sake of the fact that we're watching a movie. And it really does make a lot of us realize how ignorant we are to things like the pollution effects of the septic tank. Like, did either of you know what a septic tank was before you watched this? I didn't know what a septic tank was. I've never once thought about that in my life. Like maybe because like I said, to a degree, I'm definitely one of the ignorant city people, but it's things like that. And it's like these people like are one, like, or at least Takumi's character is sharp enough to know how that will affect the community, the way it's going to flow downstream. And I think it's just the ignorance of the business solutions that come after is one of the really the strongest scenes, where we have the two talent agents. It's like they sent the lowest level people. These people can't answer any question. They're just here to check the box that they said, oh, we talked to the community. They didn't listen. They didn't have any intention of solving any of the problems that are actually going to affect the people who live here. And it's like the effect that having transient people is going to have on the community. Like, you're going to have guests who do not care about this place. They don't live here. They don't care about it. They're just here for their whatever their vacation is. And that's a problem I think that's going on in a lot of different communities right now due to this kind of corporate takeover in the world that's kind of going on. And the boss in the end says the seminar was a success, even though he wasn't there. He didn't hear from any of the people. And he has no interest in doing a good job for the product that he's delivering, not even for the people who live in the community, but his customers. He clearly has no care for the product they're getting. He just wants to get in on it early. And it's like he says, what's it called? They're like, he says the problem they can solve is, I forget what the problem was, but the solution was cutting jobs. So when it involves cutting jobs, it's like, oh, well, that's a problem we can solve. That's no problem. And the septic tank, which is the actual big problem that's going to have severe negative effects on the community, it's like, well, can't win every battle. And there's just this total like poor communication where this guy's doing this meeting from his car. That shows just how little he cares about these problems in this community. Like, he's just, these people are not people to him. They're just numbers and a box that he needs to check. And he just thinks that these people are so stupid and can be easily manipulated. Honestly, that kind of remind me of a lot of Hollywood movie producers, how they think that the audience is just a bunch of idiots. And it's like, get him a bottle of bourbon or whatever the drink was. And of course, as soon as he gets there, he's like, Takumi's like, I don't drink. But it's just the kind of how much of an afterthought all of the people who are actually going to be affected by these corporate decisions are, and the kind of butterfly effect that it has.
Yeah, I think those the kind of urban sequences as well, especially kind of a change of pace and slight direction as well. I know we kind of have that kind of long car sequence with those two. I'm pretty sure it's two people in there. I can't remember. This is from vague memory.
Yeah,
but I remember that being a really, really good scene. A kind of this kind of like contrast of those kind of long takes in the nature versus this long take in a car going along a road. I can't remember what the conversation was about, to be honest. But
it was just about dating apps and or just general life. It was just kind of giving an insight into like the personal lives.
And like you were saying, Alex, if this was a Hollywood film, this would have been ridiculously more in your face and way more dramatic. I kind of have the same criticism with like American and English war dramas nowadays, that they just dramatize everything. And as Jonathan Glazer showed us last year, that's not how you do it. And this is exactly the same. You tone everything down and just make us sit with it rather than just throwing everything in your face. It does not work, and it is so much more meaningful when you can sit with your images and you can sit with the dialogue as well. And yeah, the contrast of both those things through his direction is just second to none, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I found like the way it kind of showed the different kind of dynamics and relationships between all the people in the movie quite interesting. Because when you initially meet these people in the meeting, I mean, you almost view them as like the evil company coming to kind of ruin their lives, but that really isn't the case when we find out that these people are just kind of normal people getting on with their lives, their jobs. They don't even really enjoy it at all or care about the jobs really at all. They want to, I mean, the guy in the car kind of expresses that he just wants to kind of leave the job and come and join the nature themselves. And he is kind of like that stand-in, like you were saying, Alex, for that kind of like city guy that comes in here and thinks it's just all chill, and this is kind of like his like retreat away. And we kind of see that with the wood chopping scene where he thinks it's just like this like fun little activity that doesn't take much effort, and that they're just out here like having fun in the nature. And there isn't actually a lot of hard work that goes into them like sustaining themselves out here. yeah, I kind of got attached to those two characters really from the company. You kind of feel bad for them, especially after seeing like their boss, like you were talking about, which really does play into the ending because it really kind of, I mean, it's a big switch up, and it's really not like a great ending for the guy from the company for him. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that just that I really like films that have a great sense of place, and I think this film is definitely a film with a really great sense of place. With there's a lot of routine and just kind of immersing us into the world and this community. And I think that I also like films that are about community. And it's funny because I saw this film for the first time when I just started writing a feature script I'm still working on, which is very much an anti-gentrification film, and I didn't even realize how anti-gentrification this film really is, and that's really what it is at its core. Is this kind of against the effects of consumerism on certain communities. And I think that it's interesting how the film shows how all of them are outsiders to a degree. And we learned in the seminar about the history of the place. And Takumi says, we're all outsiders to some degree. Like nature is the only person whose home this truly is. All of the rest of us are settlers and guests to some degree. And I think it's interesting. One really interesting piece is the lady who owns the restaurant who says, like, I wasn't born and raised here. I wouldn't call myself a local, but like I've been a part of this community. And later we see the scene where Takumi goes to her restaurant. He goes and gets her order for her restaurant. She fronts him the meal and is like, oh, you can just pay me at a later date. And it's really interesting because like they say, they're all outsiders to some degree, but because these people are all immersed themselves in the community. This lady's not from here, but she embraces and elevates the community because, Takumi's, helps her out. She has no problem from fronting him a meal. Does anyone for a second think that this glamping site would ever front anyone in the community a meal or do any type of favor for the people in the community? Absolutely not. And that's really what the major difference is that it's not the fact that they're coming in here and trying to build a business just like this lady did. She was an outsider, came here, is making money here and building a business just like them. The difference is that she clearly immerses herself in the community and cares about the community, whereas we all know that this corporation is not going to care one bit about the community, which I think is really the major difference. And I think the symbolism of the water flowing downstream is such an important piece of this because we really see that, like, I love what Ryan mentioned about the talent agents, how in so many Hollywood movies, they would be like evil minions to some degree. Like they would probably be not very intelligent minions of the more powerful boss character, but it's like, no, they're normal people with normal lives. They're worried about like their dating apps and things like that. Like they have their own lives and priorities aside from this is just what they happen to do for work just because they're just trying to put food on the table. The one guy even says like he can't afford a wife, which is definitely a lot of commentary on the kind of consumerism heavy culture. And I think that just like, is there just an effect of the water flowing downstream from their boss, who likely is someone who's just solving problems for someone above him who cares even less than this guy does, who clearly doesn't seem like he cares in his own right. And so I just think the water flowing downstream is such an important symbol and metaphor for the film. When they're searching for Hannah, we'll see like a very extra shaky handheld shot of like the running down the stream. They also use at the end of that seminar day, the water flowing downstream is the final shot of the night. And then we cut to the next morning of the busy city of Tokyo. And I just think it's such a powerful metaphor for the way just things do really affect the community based on this kind of corporate greed and consumerism. So I just think all of the elements of community, which is something I care a lot about, and have written my own films that are very different that deal with themes of community. And I think that this film just tackles those in such a really brilliant and kind of poetic way that I think makes this such a great and important film with a lot to say.
I really like that metaphor you said about the kind of water flowing down just for their lives, and it ties into the title as well. Like evil doesn't really exist, although I feel like they're still like evil inherently in humans, but like it kind of gives you that perspective that from their perspective they are not evil in what they are doing. and if you just keep going up the stream, like they themselves don't think they're evil. So I think that side played into the title quite well.
Yeah, I think the title's interesting because I think no one really knows what it means. I think everyone's going to have their own interpretation of it. And I don't think anyone really quite knows what, because it's never spoken in the film once. So I think it's a very interesting title, which gives you a lot to think about. All right, starting off with our Q&A. We only have one today. We have a Q&A each week, and we have a link in the description below where you can drop questions for us, and we'll feature them on the next episode. If we don't get to your question, we'll definitely make sure to address it in a future episode. We normally do up to about 5 a week. This week, we only have one. It is from Man in the Yellow Hat. His question is, what would y'all's ideal musical cast be? In parentheses, excluding just making La La Land again.
I was going to say Emma Stone was my first one.
Well, I guess you could do Emma Stone, but then you can't do Gosling.
Okay, let's have a think about this.
Well, we can exclude like the whole Wonka cast, like off the bat.
Hey, whoa. I want Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe, definitely.
What?
Have you seen Les Miserables?
No, I didn't know he'd done a musical.
He has done a musical. He's good in that. Yeah, I want Russell Crowe. How many are we picking?
Let's do 4. So you got 2 leads.
4. Okay, so lead Russell Crowe definitely. This is good. This is tough, actually.
It's hard. Honestly, just give me Trey Parker, Matt Stone. They've already made the greatest musical of all time. Just give me that. That's all I need.
They have Broadway musicals as well. They've done a lot of musical stuff.
Yeah, no, they're big musical guys, low-key.
Yeah.
I want Busby Berkeley directing, the greatest musical director of all time.
Well, he's from the grave.
From the grave. I want Frank Sinatra from the grave.
Oh, tell you who I want. Give me a minute.
I want Ginger Rogers from the grave as well. The lead. So I want Frank Sinatra as my lead. Leading man, I want Frank Sinatra.
Roy Scheider, definitely.
Good pick. All right, my male lead is Sinatra.
That jazz is great.
And then Ginger Rogers, my female lead, with Joan Blondell.
I mean, this changes everything if we're having people that are dead.
I know. There's not as many.
Emma Stone, definitely. And
Gene Kelly, Emma Stone.
Gene Kelly. Oh no, I need another female. Actually,
Gene Kelly's my supporting.
I'm putting Marilyn Monroe in my sporting.
That's a great pick.
Oh, that is a good pick.
You should take Marlon Brando as your lead.
Good.
You ever see Guys and Dolls?
Brando.
No.
He's got the worst voice ever.
I can't imagine doing a musical. That's crazy.
Sinatra would make fun of him every time he sang "Luck Be a Lady." He'd be like, and that great singer Marlon Brando. They hated each other when they made the film.
I can't think of the last pick. I'm trying to think of musicals I've watched.
I think Paul Mescal can sing.
You can take Jack Black.
Yeah, no, I need to take another female. Trying to think of the musicals. Oh, Anne Hathaway, actually. I'm just thinking of Les Mis. I'm just thinking of Les Mis. I'll take Anne Hathaway.
Ryan, who was yours again?
Gene Kelly, Marilyn Monroe, Emma Stone. I need a supporting actor.
Oscar, what was your 4?
Roy Scheider, Russell Crowe, Emma Stone, and Anne Hathaway.
Yeah. Mine was Sinatra, Gene Kelly, Ginger Rogers, Joan Blondell, with Busby Berkeley directing. That sounds like a dynamite movie.
Willem Dafoe. Fuck it. I'm sure he's brilliant in a musical.
All right.
He
What
would
are
not be a
our
good singer,
last?
but he'd put the effort in.
You find a way. That means it's a man of many talents. All right. What are our top 5 watches?
Is this last week or since we last did it recorded?
We'll do since last recording.
Okay, so 26th of June, I'm pretty sure it was. That's when I'm guessing.
It was. I just checked.
Nice. Top 5. Okay, let me 1, 2, 3. Let me 4. Ooh. I always say I don't do rewatches just because I like to speak about first watches rather than rewatches. First, I'm gonna honorable mention. I want to mention this because it was very close to making the cut, but a film called Sans Soleil from director Chris Marker, who made one of my all-time favorite short films, Le Jetée. Unbelievable film, and this is kind of similar in style in terms of the way he uses images, and this is kind of commentary over many images across many different things. Absolutely incredible film, and I said in my review, I think Chris Marker is one of the best understanding of what an image actually means. And this is just kind of a woman narrating over different world travelings. It's 100 minutes long. I absolutely loved it. I think it's an incredible film. I think Le Jetée is still the best thing he's ever done because it's one of my favorite short films over that. But yeah, this is absolutely incredible film and definitely deserving of an honorable mention. But my number 5 is going to be, I'm sure this will make Ryan's list absolutely. Leo Carraz, Holy Motors. I've been meaning to start this filmography for a while, and this is such a wild film, mixing absolutely everything. It's got a musical piece in it. Such a weird film, but I think it just displays kind of this shape-shifting nature of this kind of alienistic character so well. And yeah, it's such a crazy film. I don't even know what to say. I would highly recommend it. French directors are crazy, absolutely
The French
crazy.
are crazy. Never mind just French directors.
Yeah. Actually, 1 second. Yeah, that's fine. I won't do rewatches. But yeah, it's unbelievable film. I absolutely loved it. Ryan did not. That was quite funny. But yeah, my number 3. Wait, have I got this right or have I messed this up? I think I might have messed this up. Wait 1 second. I have messed this up. That is wonderful. 1 second. No, that was my. Wait, that was my. Was that my 5? Yeah.
Wasn't it your 5? I think it was your 5.
I don't even know what I'm saying.
You've done an
Okay.
honourable mention.
Thank you. My number 4 is film from 1927, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Another film I've been meaning to watch absolutely forever. Alex seems to absolutely love it. I absolutely loved it as well. Unbelievable this film was made in this time. I said in my view that F.W. Murnau just has to be a time traveler because it's just truly unbelievable film. Just the sets and the production was insane. His direction is crazy and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I had such an incredible time with this. But yeah.
Yeah, Sunrise is one of the greatest films ever made. It's F.W. Murnau died young, very young, unfortunately. We would talk about him like, John Huston and, John Ford and Frank Capra and all of those great pioneering directors of old, like ancient Hollywood, I guess you could call it. But he's one of the greatest. He was one of the first real art directors, and Sunrise is his peak accomplishment as director. It's truly one of
Nosferatu, right?
Ever.
Yeah.
He did Nosferatu as well. Yes, he was so, like Oscar said, he must have been a time traveler. He was so ahead of his time. And through Sunrise, it's on so many actors and directors is top 10 all time list for a reason, because it's just an absolutely beautiful film and is everything that's great about cinema and visual storytelling in one film.
It is an incredible film. And my number 3 is going to go to Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Tokyo Sonata, a director that I hold so highly, and I had very high expectations for this, and it just delivered them. It's not his usual thing, but he kind of brings his perfect horror craftsmanship over to a family drama that is actually at times slightly haunting, but it's just an incredible piece on crumbling family relations that has impeccable editing that I think is used so well. A film that Alex would like, it just ends just no dialogue and music, and is one of the most emotional final scenes I've seen in a while. I'd highly recommend it. It is an unbelievable film. Kiyoshi Kurosawa. You haven't seen any of his films, have you, Alex?
No, there's a lot that I've been wanting to watch. I just haven't got around to them yet.
I think you'd really like him. But yeah, this film, I just really, really impactful, and one of my favorite directors without a doubt. So that was my number 3. My number 2 is another film I've been meaning to take off for a while, and Soviet cinema is just unrivaled. They just, throughout like 40s, 50s, 60s, just kept on hammering home these unbelievable pieces, and especially their war pieces. And I watched The Cranes Are Flying this week. Just over 90 minutes long. Some of the sequences and the direction dissolves, and just the kind of the insanity of war that it shows, even though it's kind of about a relationship between a man and a woman, and the man going off to war. The lighting is, I said in my viewers, like, it's some of the greatest lighting I've ever seen in a film ever. 1957. It sits very highly in the Letterboxd 2 Top 50, and for good reason. It just blew me away completely. It's just unbelievable film, and doesn't even take the top spot for my last watch. It's just, like I said in my review, just filled with such raw emotion, which, like I was mentioning earlier, just with World War II pictures, they can get very tiring, but this is just something different. And yeah, the Soviets are just, they just do it differently, and I think that kind of era of cinema is so important. But yeah, I would highly recommend that. But by a decent way, my favorite watch of the week, Wong Kar-wai's 2046. I hadn't watched a new Wong Kar-wai in absolutely months, and I've been dying to see it. I didn't even realize until halfway through the film that it was a sequel to In the Mood for Love. I didn't even realize. But this is such sci-fi is my favorite genre, and this is such a clever way of telling it. And I like how he doesn't just use this sci-fi world as this kind of the book he's writing. He actually immerses us and reflects the characters between both those worlds, that fictional and the reality that we're actually in. Just a simultaneously futuristic and retrospective look on the struggles of a deeply flawed man, which I'm sure Alex was screaming about, because our main antagonist is so flawed, it's crazy. And kind of his journey with his writing and the women he kind of meets along the way, and quite possibly the greatest use of negative space I've ever seen in a film. Every actor is placed exactly perfectly in the frame, and we kind of, within this kind of film, there's kind of half the conversations in the film, like you only see one actor in the shot, though he kind of uses this negative space that almost creates this split screen effect in the film, and it's so good. Highly recommend. My favorite Wong Kar-wai so far. Just that opening quote, "All memories are traces of tears." So beautiful, and it's blew me away, that film.
Damn, I need to watch this. I nearly watched it because I seen In the Mood for Love in cinemas like a couple of weeks ago. I nearly watched it like right after that, But yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check it out if it's your number one.
So
Wong
gorgeous,
Kar-wai.
man. So just majority of the film is just like interior sequences, really tight framing, and you hardly see kind of any exterior kind of sequences really. Apart from you kind of get that one shot of the sign of the hotel. We see loads of our characters kind of hanging off the balcony. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. But yeah, shout out to Tan as well. I rewatched that. That would have been in my top 5 if I had rewatches. But yeah, I love that film.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my top 5.
2046 is like a top 25 movie ever for me. It's the most criminally underrated Wong Kar-wai movie. I hate that Fallen Angels, it gets so much more attention than it does because I think it's a far better film than Fallen Angels. I think
Those are my top 2. It's close for me, but 2046 does take you.
I love Fallen Angels. It's still a 5-star for me. I love the movie, but like 2046 is really up there with In the Mood for Love and Chungking Express, which I consider 2 of the absolute greatest films ever made in the history of cinema. It's like I can't even describe in the words how much I love that movie. It's just one of the absolute best. I can't recommend it enough. I find it insanely relatable. One of the most relatable Wong Kar-wai films is Oscar's calling him a deeply flawed protagonist. So shots low key fire, but no, he definitely is a very flawed character, and I think I love the direction Wong took his character coming off of In the Mood for Love, and it's just such a honestly, like I'm just gonna stop talking about it because it'll turn into a whole episode on 2046. I just love that.
We need to do an episode. He's such a flawed protagonist now. He just he wants to be with a woman, just keeps on turning him down.
No, he's very, very, very
perfect
flawed.
opportunity, and he loses it every time. But yeah,
Is it actually science fiction?
So our protagonist is writing a science fiction novel, but there are plenty of sequences that are set in that science fiction world that, like I said, reflect on what's actually happening in his reality. But yeah, it's so good. I count it as science fiction, even though it may be borderline.
The sequences make it clearly a sci-fi movie, and yeah, it's one of the most accurate portraits of what it's like to be a writer of any movie ever. All right, Ryan, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I've been struggling to even form a 5. I've been ill for the past week, so I've done a lot of rewatches. I'm trying to only pick first watches for it. So I was struggling to even get to really 5 that I was passionate about. But my number 5 is one that we watched, The American Friend by Wim Wenders. What's one of his films from the 70s.
Yeah.
It was a very good looking movie. A variation on the Tom Ripley, talented Mr. Ripley world character. I don't know, you'd explain that whole kind
it
of
has a cinematic universe that kind of those kind of characters now.
Yeah, there's so many adaptations of that character. Very different to the Matt Damon version. The guy Dennis Hopper in this is playing Tom. So it's a really different kind of version of the character, but it's really interesting. Still, that's my number 5. Number 4 is a new watch. Oscar didn't like this quite as much, but I watched the new Quiet Place. Last week.
You had that above American Friend.
Yeah.
Oh, this
I really like this one.
So nothing, man.
I liked it. So I didn't have high expectations going into this, honestly, because it looked like an action film. And all the actors before it were saying it was just an action film opposed to the first of our horror films. But I really like the director of this. What's his name? Michael Sarnowski. He made Pig.
Fantastic film. This was a big step down.
I feel like there's a lot of connections between this and Pig. It kind of feels like Pig almost to that. Both the protagonists have these one goals, and I feel like kind of why people hated this because it kind of felt small scale compared to your expectations of this post-apocalyptic world in New York.
I wasn't expecting big scale. I just didn't really care for anything.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the intimate human story that it told. I think he done quite a good job. There's also a cat in this, which is like the best animal acting movie like I've ever seen.
No, Messi. You're not beating Messi.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, okay. He's definitely got the number one spot. So yeah, that was a nice surprise for me at least. My number 3 is most of my first watches have been Bergman films recently because I'm just going through his filmography. So my number 3 is Shame, which is pretty different from the rest of his films, honestly. This is made at the end of the 60s with Liv Ullmann and Max von Sydow. It's kind of the start of his like unofficial trilogy. I don't remember what it's called, but there's like 3 films where it's those two are the lead in a marriage, or deals with them dealing with their own marriages. It's like an unofficial trilogy within Bergman's films, but probably my favorite of the trilogy so far. I feel like this probably had, I don't know if it actually did, but it feels like there was influences for Come and See in this film, because it's just like a World War film that's, I think it's pretty distinctive. There's a lot of traumatic moments in this film that really make it distinctive from the rest of Bergman's films, so I really like that, and great performances as always. My number 2, Scenes of a Marriage. I didn't love this quite as much as I expected because I thought it'd be honestly be close to 5. I thought it was a pretty safe like Bergman like top spot. But I think the performances and everything are like top tier like Bergman, but I feel like it's almost a bit. I mean, it was made for TV, so I don't think it's quite like as cinematic as these other films. Sven Nykvist, I don't know how you say that. He is honestly one of the best cinematographers of all time. And he's really like once you've like reached that stage of Bergman's career, when he like comes in, his films just look gorgeous. I just don't know if this is like his best work personally in all of Bergman's films. So it was a bit lower down than I expected, but still a great film. I need to watch the TV version because apparently that is a lot more impactful.
Alexander.
Yeah, I'm almost there. This was made for TV first, though, and then turned into theatrical film. I'm not sure. It's a bit different from Fanny Alexander. So apparently the TV version is better, and I don't know if that's the case for Fanny and Alexander. So I might check that out eventually. So that was my number 2. My number 1 is another Bergman, Hour of the Wolf. This was his only horror film, but I was actually blown away from this. This is like the opposite for where I think this is probably Sven's best work with Bergman, possibly, which is a really high regard because his films look ridiculous. All of them look so good. But this was after Persona, so it's like very experimental with his surrealism. And it really worked for like the horror, kind of like horror style that it was working with. So yeah, just I loved the I mean like half of it really dives into the horror aspects, and I feel like it's very influential for. There's some Lynch stuff in here specifically. I feel like I know Lynch was definitely inspired by Bergman. Probably Persona as well. It's kind of like surrealism elements. So yeah, there's a lot of like kind of psychological horror stuff in here that you can see that's influenced a lot of stuff. So this was a bit of a surprise. I did expect it to be like really one of my favorite Bergmans just because it was like titled as Bergman's horror film, but it is probably like 2 or 3 in his filmography for me right now. So it was a nice surprise. But that's my 5.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to pick from. Also, dub on all those Bergmans being in your top 3 because Bergman is one of the best directors ever. So dub on that. Yeah, I only watched 8 films since our last episode, so I don't have a ton to pick from. But starting us off, number 5, Ty West's Pearl. I saw a doubleheader of rewatching both X and Pearl, and they really flipped in ratings for me. I think they're both good films. Pearl, I just you like X better, I'm guessing?
Yeah, X is better.
X is better.
I liked X a lot better when I first watched them. I thought Pearl just had a lot more to say, and I thought it was commenting on a lot more. I just found it to be a more interesting character study than X on a rewatch. I think X is better.
Their character study.
But X is a slash. X is a cool slasher.
It is. I feel like X is a better first watch. Pearl's a better multi-watch movie. Like, I feel like X, there wasn't as much that
I
was
have
added
not
on
seen
rewatch.
Pearl more than once.
Yeah,
I like it, but X is still better.
I respect. I don't think it's that big of a difference between them, but Pearl, I definitely enjoyed a lot more on a rewatch. I think that, yeah, I just think there's more. It's more of an artistic film than X, which is more just a fun slasher, which I really did enjoy a lot. But it just there wasn't as much that I was like picking up on that on a second watch that I didn't on the first. Where Pearl, I felt that a lot more. Number 4 would be great French director Jacques Demy's Lola, starring the great Anouk Aimée, who is one of the best European actresses of the 50s, 60s. And this film I really loved. I think it's probably my favorite film from Demy yet, who is a great director. I love his kind of themes of like timing and like the timing around relationships. He does like such a great job of, and it's really just such a real part of relationships that I don't think filmmakers capture enough, especially not like him. That's been present very much in all 3 of the films I've seen from him. Just this kind of like right person, wrong time, and just the effects of timing and the butterfly effect, the way that plays into relationships, he just nails so perfectly. And the relationships of this film, there's just so many layers to them, so many complexities and just mixed emotions and feelings about things. And I could definitely see this going up on a rewatch. Anouk Aimée gives a dynamite performance as always. She just has such a star factor to her. And yeah, it was just such an interesting film. Like just the psychology behind the characters was very interesting and real. Really, really enjoyed that film a lot. Would love to rewatch it. Pretty quick watch too. It wasn't even a full hour and a half. So very quick, easy watch. Number 3 would be one of a very underrated director who I find a lot of his films to be actually very relatable would be Barry Levinson, who did Liberty Heights. It's a film about, it's a very slice of life piece about a suburb of Baltimore in the 1950s. I think Baltimore is a very underrepresented city in a lot of films. And even though it's not really about the city, it's more about this Jewish suburban community in Baltimore. I think it's definitely like relatable to, Italians, Irish, like all different types of ethnic communities. And I think just the characters are so interesting. The conversations are all non-plot conversations. They're just more just this real stuff that like high school kids talk about. And it's the interactions are so authentic and the conflicts are very real to what it's like to be that age. The way it recreates a time and place and the sense of the time and place is so well crafted, and like it feels so personal to Levinson at all times. And it's just a film I'd seen it once before in high school as like kind of a high school semi watch, but this time I really got to pay attention to sit with the film and really enjoyed it a lot. Number 2 would be Damien Chazelle's Whiplash. I saw this for a Sundance course I've been taking online. And after that, Damien Chazelle actually came in and spoke, which was an insanely cool experience just to, be in a Zoom call that he was a part of. And it's an incredible film. It's one of the best debuts. The performances are incredible. 2 of the best performances ever. The script's incredible. Just the way his story beats are. And it's just, it's Damien Chazelle. It just shows what a talented director he was from the very start. And it's insane that this is not his best or second best film, which is not a criticism of this film. It just shows how great Babylon and La La Land are. He's one of the best directors. Everyone knows how great Whiplash is. There's not much I need to say. Number 1 is in theater seeing. Anytime you get to see a masterpiece from the great Sergio Leone is an incredible experience. Number 1 is Fistful of Dollars, the film that really redefined the most American genre and showed that Italians are a lot better at making them than Americans are, with this poverty B movie that ended up becoming one of the greatest and most influential Westerns of all time. It's definitely the weakest of the trilogy. Leone didn't have the budget or the resources to bring his full vision to life yet, but just Morricone's score is incredible. Clint Eastwood's style is as stylish, as cool of a character as you'll ever see. And it's just, I love it. It's the best trilogy in film history, unless you count the Wong Kar-wai 1960s Hong Kong trilogy. Ennio Morricone and Sergio Leone are the best director-composer duo of all time, and anytime I could see one of his films in theaters, it's incredible. Fistful of Dollars is my number one of the week.
Nice. Would kill to see a Leone in cinemas.
Have I seen everyone?
Yeah,
in
would be
theaters?
good.
I've seen every.
Imagine we get one in 2 weeks' time, Ryan, in the potluck thing.
Oh, Once Upon a Time in the West. It was crazy.
Oh my god.
I've seen every major Leone in theaters. I haven't seen Ducky Sucker or Colossus of Rhodes in theaters.
Have you seen any on film?
0. Have not seen a single one on film, unfortunately. Would definitely.
I'd kill to see Once Upon a Time on the West in 70 mil.
I would even more so love to see one with a live orchestra.
Live orchestra, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
God, that would be insane.
I'd pay any amount of money to see that. Let's get back to talking about Ryusuke Hamaguchi's Evil Does Not Exist. And to get us back into things, I think one other element of the film that I relate to so much and really love is the way it talks about this urban dependency versus rural independence. We know right from the start when we're immersed in that kind of routine of Takumi's life, how kind of independent he is with, he's very self-survival. He's in a survival situation, he would be totally fine. And then when the city characters come into play, there's just a total reliance and dependency on technology, which is never once addressed in the dialogue. It's always just kind of shown instead of told. We see, like, in that conversation car ride between the two town agents, they're using, he even uses an insert shot to kind of draw our attention to it a little more. They're using GPS to get places, reliance on technology. The one guy's using dating apps. He's even relying on technology romantically. He's relying on technology. They have the meeting with the boss. It's not even in person, face to face with like a real human interaction. It's over Zoom. And they're just constantly showing us this absolute dependency and reliance on technology from the city characters versus a character like Takumi, where we never really see him use any type of technology. And he's just entirely independent and self-reliant, which really is just brilliant show don't tell commentary from Hamaguchi in this film. And we even see things like when Takumi's chopping the wood, and it's just it's so fluid, the motion of it. We just get kind of caught in the trance of the motion. It's so fluid. And the guy does, and he just can't chop the wood at all. It's just a complete failure. And it just really calls our attention, I think, to the dependency that we have on technology, which I think is another really strong show don't tell element of the film.
I just wanted to go kind of slightly back to what I was saying earlier with kind of the gunshots and the way that Hamaguchi kind of every now and again reminds us of our place in the cycle of nature. And we kind of see along with the gunshots, we get kind of shots of decomposed animal carcasses as well. And we get that thing between the daughter and the elderly man, like the passing of the feathers in a kind of community space. And in kind of this hierarchy that between nature and that community that they still live in, because I think there's multiple kind of contrasts and connections between those two and between the kind of urban world as well. And I think the message of the film is what I got. Hamaguchi tells us that kind of the deer in this film is a creature that when it's had its kind of trail land threatened, it will only serve as a danger when it's been shot. And I think for me, what I took from the film is that the deer kind of represents the community, and the urbanization of the glamping is kind of that bullet, is that shot that this is kind of this cautionary tale about what happens when the quiet are threatened. Like, to us kind of deers, they won't threaten us, but when you shoot them or when you really get in their face, they're going to snap. And I think this is what kind of I took from the whole film and what he was trying to get at with the deer. And I think the ending is kind of quite evident with that. That kind of whole last sequence, we're talking about the direction kind of changing up slightly for the urban sequences, but that kind of leading up to the very last sequences when the direction changes the most. We're kind of moving into these really frantically moving, quick moving sequences. We kind of like got this gorgeous blue, dark blue over the film. It looks absolutely stunning. Where the shots are kind of cutting quicker and we're kind of moving from kind of bits to bits. And then as soon as that kind of climax ends and I love how the final couple shots of the film are just longer static takes of this, as if like everything's gone straight back to normal again. Like we're how we are at the start of the film, and like what kind of like nature was threatened has just been ceased and everything is back to same and evil doesn't exist apparently.
Yeah, I kind of had a pretty similar interpretation of the ending. But there was that conversation in the truck when they're talking about the deers being shot and they're fighting back against if their child or if their children are threatened by like a hunter or something like that. And that's how I kind of interpreted the ending. Like it's not like a gunshot or anything, but it's like he feels that like this corporation is coming in to destroy his like way of living and like the future of his child, and it's almost like him like reacting to the hunter in a way. In this case, it's kind of like it was the middleman to the corporation himself who isn't really evil, but he's just kind of like what was there and he's reactionary to it. It's a weird ending because the rest of the film's kind of played out as this like realistic kind of film, and it gets a bit surreal at the end. We're not really sure like the timing of everything, like when the child finds the deer and stuff like that, or like what they're seeing. It's all very kind of jarring compared to the rest of the film. So it really is the big moment in the film that kind of changes your perspective of the whole film. It kind of makes you have to think about everything that you've already like seen. I apparently there's some other surrealist moments in the film I'd seen, but I didn't pick up on any of those. I don't know if that's true, because I couldn't find any of them myself. But yeah, the ending's definitely effective in making you go back and kind of think about how the whole film kind of led up to that moment.
Yeah, I actually I think that deer, the whole metaphor of the deer is another one of just the brilliant kind of visual metaphors in Hamaguchi storytelling, where like this might not be a film for people who want everything explained to them because it's very tell don't show. But I think it's very clear, especially on a rewatch, that when Takumi describes the deer, he's to them right it's actually in that car ride after he hears the gunshot, and we can see just from his actions the speed he walks to the car. In the car, his face is kind of shadowed, hiding his nerves. We can see there is a fear in him to a degree, as they're really like it becomes a panic search for Hannah, but there still is like they're on their way to get her. There is a bit of a worry in him, I feel like, is kind of comes across in the performance. And I think he's talking about himself, like he's the wounded deer, because they only attack if they've been wounded or if they've lost a child. And I think like there's just on a rewatch, there's so much irony to this film with hearing the gunshots constantly. And one thing you really start to notice on a rewatch is the synchronization or the kind of visual connection Hamaguchi creates between Hannah and the deer, where in the town hall meeting, there's a cutaway we see it's one of the only purely silent sequences of the film where we see the footsteps of the deer tracks. And from there, we cut out to Hannah, and that's when she's watching the deer. And it's just, there's no words. It's just this purely cinematic connection that's created between Hannah and the deer, all just done visually, just with juxtaposition. And all this is cross-cut by within the seminar, which we know is going to provoke the cause and effect distraction of Takumi, which will eventually, unfortunately, lead to her death because of this distraction and this like tactic of, oh, go talk to this guy from the boss who's like not at all thinking about that they're inconveniencing this person's day, that he has a daughter to take care of. He's just thinking about checking the box of that they acted like they cared about the locals. And I think just that cause and effect distraction and what it leads to is just obvious. Like, is it technically like that guy's fault? Like, no, like it's like obviously no one could have predicted that, but it's just really showing you the minor cause and effect details of these corporate actions where like it's just even just like putting that glamping site in this community is going to have great effects on the people. And Hamaguchi's really, I feel like, using this metaphor to really communicate that with the us as the audience. And yeah, I think also, after the deer tracks, when she sees the deer, there's her in that same field where she'll eventually, unfortunately, be killed. And just on a rewatch, just the irony under that, seeing her there where she's kind of, there's the bird flying and then we tilt down to her and the bird's flying as she's running. And there's like this just synchronization between her and the bird in the same way she kind of had that stare connection with the deer. They're just creating visually without words a synchronization between Hannah's character and the wildlife. And I think it really is just showing us like how she's really able to live in synchronization with nature, whereas the characters, some of the other characters, like the city characters, are not able to live in that same synchronization with the environment. Like I've said, this is a film about the impact we leave on our environment and the kind of relationship that we have with nature. And we see that kind of this just natural synchronization between Hannah and nature throughout the whole film. And I think she really does represent the youth. And I think Hamaguchi is to a degree trying to say that the youth are suffering because of these corporate actions and the effect that that's having on the youth and how it's like killing the youth and all of like their future because of these actions, how she would not get to grow up in that same community with nature and that same sense of community if the glamping site's there, because we all know it will have major changes on this community and this sense of place. So even though he might be going to pretty extreme music, more extreme metaphors to communicate that, I think it's very powerful in the way he does it and is a very strong gut punch ending. I love the way that he kind of makes it surreal there with like when she takes her hat off. It's the first real like elevating story beat that he uses where he cues the music right there. And just in the end, as Takumi carries her off down the Z-axis, he just kind of blends in with nature in the end. He becomes one with nature. And then the final shot of going back to that opening shot now at night, where it's the same, only now we hear this really heavy breathing, which is obviously Takumi as he's carrying his daughter to hopefully get some type of medical help. I think it also is like now that he's become one with nature, essentially visually, and he's blended in with nature, it's as if we're hearing like the breaths of nature, and like it's nature that's breathing, and it's struggling to survive with the way it's the sound of the breaths is like a desperation in the breath that's struggling to survive. And I think Hamaguchi's connecting Takumi's character with nature to represent this kind of struggle to survive from nature due to our effects on it and how the kind of city influence is killing nature. And he's using kind of just the breaths in that final shot, I feel like, are so powerful. And when the movement stops and the breaths eventually dim out, I think it's such a powerful way to end this film, which is such a big reason why I think it just had such a powerful ending that made me want to not get up at the end and really just sit there with thoughts and feelings that the film left me with.
Just ending on those kind of exact same shots, just in darker than what you're beginning with, was so clever. Like almost nothing had changed, just day had passed, really. Hamaguchi and handful of other directors are putting kind of Japanese cinema back onto the map and like on the top of kind of the modern food chain back to what it was and what it should be. And it's so great to see. And I think this film as a whole, I kind of summed up in the article I wrote, is just a reminder of our place and responsibilities in the cycle of nature in a ever urbanizing world, and a tale of what happens even when the quiet are threatened. But yeah, I just, without a doubt, one of the best of the year, and one I hope will just keep on going up on rewatches. But yeah, incredible film.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the most interesting directors working there now. It's Interesting how like even he makes the nature look nice, even when there's those scenes where she walks home from school by herself, and even she like walks past like a big pile of like cow shit, and like it's unironically like one of the best shots in the film.
Yeah, that shot is so good.
Yeah, just so many good shots.
The
Yeah,
frozen
absolutely.
lake is crazy. I love those shots
The
in
poster
particular.
from this film,
I was just about
one
to
of the
say the
best posters is.
of the year is so good. It's and I like how they kind of incorporate the kind of oil imagery into some of the posters. You kind of get this like rainbow effect in the water with the oil, and it looks gorgeous. And I like the way they kind of mix those two things in into the posters and the theming as well. But yeah, posters absolutely stunning.
Yeah, one actually quick thing about the imagery I think we should mention is it's interesting how he reuses this one shot. It's out of the back window of a car, and it's like the car is moving away, and it's like I'm not quite sure what it means. He uses it 4 times. He uses it when he picks his daughter up from school. He uses it for the highway conversation between the town agents. He uses it leaving school the second time when she's not there, and he uses it for a fourth when the sun has gone down. What he's trying to communicate with this shot, I haven't quite figured out or don't really have a confident interpretation of it at the moment. Maybe it's like us moving away from nature or something like that. But yeah, I think it's just worth noting that I noticed he reuses that shot multiple times. I'm not quite sure why, but he's definitely, I feel like there's something he's trying to communicate and create some type of pattern there with the reuse of that shot. But the imagery of this film is just absolutely beautiful, and the cinematography is just incredible. Yeah, I just think that we're all big fans of Japanese cinema. Normally, when people think of Japanese cinema, we think 50s, 60s, the era of people like Kurosawa and Kobayashi and Ozu and all of those greats of Japanese cinema. But Asian cinema as a whole right now, and when you throw in especially Hong Kong and South Korea, what they're producing and have been producing, it's just really getting a resurgence with people like Hamaguchi and Hirokazu Koreeda, and just these. And then on animation, of course, you have people like Miyazaki who have been producing great work for decades now. So it's just great to see such a fresh and talented voice, keeping the talent, keeping the Japanese cinema alive and strong today. I'll be watching any film with the name Ryusuke Hamaguchi on it coming forward, along with Eiko Ishibashi, who I really hope they use that collaboration. Like he uses her music even more in his upcoming films, because her music is just incredible. It's so peaceful and harmonious, and I just could listen to it all day. So yeah, he's just one of the most interesting directors, and I think we're very blessed that his films are traveling to America and we're getting access to them, and that he's received the acclaim that he's deserved. This is my number 2 on the year, and probably will stay that way for the rest of the year. Anyone have anything else?
This is my number 4 of the year, I think, but I can see it moving up. Definitely.
Let's check. It's my number 8 in the year.
Shame. I'm joking. Yeah. I wish it was out more available, but it probably will be. I hope it gets a physical release. I'm not sure if it will, but yeah. Watch it if you can find anywhere online.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful film.
But Drive My Car got and Drive My Car's in the Criterion Collection, is it not?
Yep, I have the Criterion.
Nice. Did it win international feature that year?
It did win international, and that was a really competitive year for international.
It was stacked.
It was going up against Hand of God and Worst Person in the World, which were all 3 of them. I think I gave all 3 of those 5 stars. That was a very stacked international film year.
Still haven't seen Worst Person in the World. I don't know how.
Worst Person in the World is probably my favorite of those 3.
I think Hand of God's my favorite of those 3.
Hand of God is also my favorite by a bit. That's a film I really connect with deeply on a personal level. So I really that film I think was my favorite of the year, along with Licorice Pizza. But they were both. I think it was like Hand of God, Licorice Pizza, and then Drive My Car at 3, or maybe I think I had Drive My Car over Dune. I think it was close, but 2021 is such an underrated film year. No one gives that year the praise that it deserves. That is one of the best film
What
years.
else came out that year? Green Knight, fantastic film.
You had those four with we had those five: Hand of God, Drive My Car, Worst Person in the World, Dune 1, Licorice Pizza, Belfast, which I loved. You had Last Night in Soho from Edgar Wright, which I also loved. Would you say?
Power of the Dog.
No,
Belfast is a sneak.
Last Night in Soho is a sneak. That film.
I loved Last Night in Soho. I know wasn't as popular. I love Belfast, and Last Night in Soho I think is actually mighty.
Luca.
Edgar Wright movie.
Luca was fantastic. Last Night in Soho was mid.
Luca, one of the best Pixar films of recent years.
Titan.
My top 3 is.
Wait, how did Titan not won international feature that year? That was easily the best.
I actually haven't seen it. So.
Oh, it didn't get nominated.
Did it not? It won Palme d'Or. And it didn't
it's a horror movie, so they didn't like it.
It won Palme d'Or. That's actually criminal.
You know what else we got in 2021? The most criminally underrated Wes Anderson movie, The French Dispatch, which is top 3 Wes Anderson.
No, worst.
Top 3 Wes
It's top 4, top 5, maybe.
Bad film.
And I'll give you another underrated film that is so overhated. Paul Schrader's The Card Counter. Such an underrated film.
Good film. It's solid.
Only
It's solid.
2021 movie I've not seen.
Old came out in 2021.
Old did as well. That's another criminally It's the year of the underrated movie. I'm telling you. You got Suicide Squad, one of the better comic book movies. You got Coda, which I actually like. I'm not saying deserves to win Best Picture, but like Coda is a good movie. It's very
Coda's overhated now just because people go into expecting a masterpiece.
Spielberg's West Side Story. We got a good musical. Like 2021 was a good film year. There's really good films outside my top 10.
The Last Duel was fantastic.
I wanted to see that. It left theaters fantastic.
Sean Baker's Red Rocket's my number 2 of the year as well. No, it was 2020.
Red Rocket, yeah. Mad God, have you guys seen that?
Yeah,
I have not.
It was an impressive animated film.
It's crazy.
Oh wait, we didn't even mention actually the best film of the year, Nightmare Alley.
It was a great film.
Bit too far.
It wouldn't be my best thing.
I'm huge on. I think that film gets better every rewatch. I think it's such a criminally underrated film. It's the best Del Toro movie. It's the best Del Toro movie, and I'll die on that hill.
Hell no.
Yeah, I don't like that call.
No way taking that.
It is underrated.
I will die on that hill happily.
It is a pretty underrated year, honestly. Like the peak of it is really good.
I think it's actually. I think it's crazy.
Did you see that zombie film, Ryan? The Sadness. That Taiwanese zombie.
Oh yeah, so good. Yeah, that's a good film.
Oh dear, interesting year. Some stinkers, but
I mean, there's stinkers every year.
Malignant.
Hey, whoa.
Oh, it's a banger. I mean, I didn't mean it as a stinker.
I was gonna say, I thought you were saying it was a stinker.
All right, I think that wraps up our episode.
Petite Maman as well. How we
on that like fell under the radar that year.
I love Celine Sciamma.
But all right, like, subscribe, all that, and we'll be back next week. Another great episode. Thank you for watching.